Excellent work, man. Excellent. I have to confess, I don't think I'm very much like Maxima. I think I'm more like your boring king.
And you are.
Yeah, let's talk about this a little bit.
We should give this guy a few drinks later on and find the opposite.
So, I love people like Maxima, but I know that I'm a little more stodgy, you know.
Right.
And so, how do we? I think that's why the king is attracted to her, you know, because he doesn't have those qualities. When we're building our websites, building our pages, how do we learn to think more like her when we just aren't in that mindset? When we're just, it has to be this way, and we don't have. I don't put hearts on things.
I'm going to give you two answers.
Yes.
The first one is not true.
Okay.
That you are way more a king. It's an illusion that we have so much control over our behavior. There's a very nice study done by Michael Gazinaga and Ledoux. I hope you're awake enough for this study. You have to really break your mind to it. We have people who have what we call split brain. In your brain, there are two halves, and they're communicating via the corpus callosum. It's a small bridge. And people with epileptic episodes, they're like, what neurologists do, they cut through this corpus callosum. So these people have a split brain, they have two halves, which are not communicating. You don't notice anything particular about these people unless you start testing with them. And the experiment that Gazinaga and Ledoux did was that they said, okay, look at the screen, we'll very briefly show you a picture, and then in the picture there was a snow-covered lane and the foot of a chicken. And he asked them, it was very briefly shown, so the picture was, the left picture, snow-covered lane, was entering the right hemisphere, and the chicken foot, the left hemisphere. Are you with me? Two hemispheres, each of them saw another picture. And then he asked them to pick a card among a whole row of cards, every hand one picture. So half of your brain is controlling one hand. So they were picking two cards, and they choose exactly the same card as you and I would choose. It was a chicken head related to the chicken foot, and it was a snow shovel related to the snow-covered lane. So far, so good. No distinction between them and us. But then he asked why. And these people are saying, I chose the chicken head because I saw a chicken foot. And I chose the shovel because I'm going to dig the poo from the chicken. And they were very serious. And he showed the picture again, and I looked with both eyes and said, I get it. You think I chose it because a snow shovel, because of the snow-covered lane. But the thing with asking it is that you're using language to ask it, right? It's just a verbal question. And language is processed only by the left hemisphere. So if you're talking language to a split-brain patient, where the information is not transferred from one half to the other half of the brain, you're only talking to the left hemisphere. The left hemisphere only saw the chicken, has no clue about why the other hemisphere chose the snow shovel. But instead of saying, hey, I don't know, your mind comes up with a reason. Right. And the illusion that you are more like the king, we all have that illusion. It is because all those reasons you have for buying are what we call post-decision rationalized. Huh. You made a choice subconsciously, your brain feels very awkward about that, very uncomfy, and your brain is very polite. You should be very thankful to your brain, because it's making up an alibi, but it's a pure lie. So you choose that health insurance because of this and this reason. But it was not. It was because of green asterisks or a picture. I mean, we're testing this. It's not the argument that's persuasive.
So we're all more like Maxima than we realize. We're just rationalizing our way out of it.
We live in the illusion of being a king, but we are all queens, right? And how do we find? Because that was your first. That was the first thing. You didn't ask that. Just had to.
Yeah. How do we find our inner Maxima?
Your second question is how do we find that?
Yeah.
So what we tend to do is four things. We do a lot of studying before we start optimizing or coming up with new campaigns. The first thing we do is we look at data, like all of you do, but from a psychological perspective. So, and I don't want the funnel, I want the real actual behavior. How are people clicking through the site? Are there segments? Though the segments differ based on source or previous messages, based on different ad campaigns, whatever. And it's really a cooperation between a very good data scientist, web analyst, and a psychologist. So they sit together, analyze that behavior. We call it view of the customer. Second, what we do is we might have a few questions for the king. And we just start asking questions, little surveys, pop-ups, like, can you answer this question? So we get a little bit view of the rational part of it. And then when we know about the behavior and what people are doing, what people are saying, we go to science, grab that. That's actually the most valuable. I want you all to go to Google Schooler. For me, it's very easy to win a new client if I'm in competition, because all I do is half an hour spending on Google Schooler, trying to find what is scientifically studied in this market, whatever your market is. I will find studies, and I'm sitting there with my client. I can tell them who are the big professors, what are the breakthrough studies that have been done, and somehow my clients never did that themselves. It's a very easy trick. So that's science. And then finally, I want to know your strategy, your value proposition, because all the optimization should, of course, be in line with your strategy. And then we start testing. But then I have a really good view already from, is this emotional-driven behavior? Is it, right?
So let's ask about that. So you've looked at thousands of pages, and you've had data on thousands of studies. When you look at a page, you probably have like 12 things right off the bat that you know through your own testing.
No, I don't. No, I don't.
You don't think so?
No. And I think every speaker on stage, sometimes you have like on conferences like the landing page smackdown.
Yeah.
And the expert will say like, oh, you should do this, you should do this. Like, it's bullshit. Test it, it's bullshit. They can't tell what's working because they don't know what's driving their customers. They don't know in what phase of the dialogue they are. They don't know if they're exhausted or depleted or not. They don't know if it's what they saw before, after. It's bullshit.
Yeah. So this goes to a lot of the questions that I want to get to here.
Very
like
good.
People are asking, where do you start? But you're saying test everything. You don't
No,
know.
well, it depends on your testing capacity, right? So the smaller your bandwidth, the bigger your challenge, and that's why we also really love small clients. But just if you go to scientific articles, you will directly find whether your market is very rational or not. If you're a financial institution, the saving accounts are very rational. The loans are very irrational, because we don't actually want a loan, we just want to spend it on something else. If you're in the flash deal market, it's total emotional. Right? You shouldn't think too much about it. But any other market is probably somewhere in between, and you have to really dive into science and then start experimenting to find what phase of the dialogue is actually emotional versus not.
So Lucas asked, and thank you, Lucas, for the question, about sharing examples where the test result, you had some expectations, test results showed that you were actually wrong. How often are you really surprised, like, oh, this didn't work at all?
I have so many examples there. I mean, there's so much things that I was shouting on stage even before I started experimenting. I love, for example, social proof is a very nice example, because I had tested it. I'm mentioning loans and saving accounts. So we had saving accounts. Social proof was uplifting. More than 30% saving accounts sold if you told about other people also saving money. It's good. But that is because if you make people aware of themselves, they think like, oh, what are others thinking of me when I'm saving money? It's good. But then I just blindly started advising, test it on loans as well. It had a counter-effective effect. When I tested it, it was lowering conversions and sales. Looking back, I think, yeah, it's stupid. I could have guessed that up front, because if you make people aware that they're actually applying for a loan, at least in the Netherlands, you're an asshole if you have a loan. It's bad. So you don't want people to remind them of the society, other people, because it will make them think, oh, no, other people will think I'm stupid when I'm having a loan. So that's a very clear example where I was totally wrong.
Yeah. So we've got a couple questions here about...
Just come to me after I have so many examples where we were wrong.
You're never wrong, never. We have a couple questions here about B2B segments. A very long buying cycle, 3 months or more. Is Maxima still in control of that decision-making process when it's over 3 months?
Right. So this B2B is very interesting for several reasons. Usually you have a very low, if any, this guy has no testing bandwidth at all, because 3 months is impossible to test. The biggest problem with running experiments is what we call sample pollution. You are using so many devices that every time you come to the website with a new device, you are a unique visitor. You're not, you're the same person, but you're entering my test again. 3 months, people will have used so many devices that they've seen each and every variation. It's useless testing with that long period. Right? Most of my clients have, within 1 week, 50% of the people being shown both variations. You should definitely measure sample pollution, because you have to compensate that for that statistically. So in his case, It's useless testing. 3 months. Like mortgage, the same story. 3 months. It's impossible. But it's even more challenging because in B2B, there's usually a team of people deciding. And we have all these group processes. And now I can talk like for days about group processes.
Right.
But the group is maxima so involved with the group. What's my boss thinking? What's this beautiful colleague of mine thinking? That the decision will end up to be current in the group. It's very culturally dependent as well.
Yeah.
It might be a little bit less here than the female countries like the Netherlands or Sweden. But those processes are very much controlled by Maxima. On the other hand, we have, if people are deciding for their boss and they have to bring arguments to the stage for that decision, it might actually be very rational because I have to, people are judging me based on rational arguments, so it might be a very rational.
Yeah,
But
that's really interesting. All the studies that show that most business-to-business decision-making are made by groups of 6 to 7 people, and there are definitely Maximas and Kings and the whole mix in there.
But they are making Excel sheets with pros and cons, which are not that valid.
Yeah. Okay. Final question for you. Do you recommend any books or research materials for people?
Well, if you haven't read Daniel Kahneman, you should read it. If you find that a hard read, because it's a real scientist, although this is the popular version of it, Thinking Fast. So it's Dan Ariely with Predictable Irrational. It's more easy to read.
Yeah.
And if you read both those two, come to me. I'll give you a huge list of shit to read.
Excellent. That was fascinating. Thank you for everything. Bart,
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hey, good job.
Thank
Nice
you.
work.